The rain fell in relentless sheets, lashed sideways by a wind that howled like a wild beast through the skeletal trees lining the deserted road. It was close to midnight, and on the outskirts of a sleepy Midwestern town, the storm raged on, unyielding and merciless. The world was cold, soaked, and unwelcoming. From the shadows of a narrow alley near the woods, a German shepherd limped forward, his ribs sharply outlined beneath a coat of drenched, matted fur. Every step was slow, labored. Days without food, weeks without shelter. The bitter cold gnawed at his bones, but hunger kept him moving, nose low to the ground, sniffing between overturned bins and soggy wrappers. Once, he had a name, Maximum, but not anymore. Now, he was just another stray, unseen, unwanted, a soul the world had tossed aside. As he searched for scraps, a faint sound cut through the roar of the storm. He froze, ears perked. Again, a high-pitched cry, weak, human. Not a dog, not a cat, a baby. Max turned sharply, eyes fixed on a shadowy patch of trees. He ran, paws splashing through puddles, branches slapping his flanks, until he reached it. There, half buried under wet leaves and bramble, was a white styrofoam box, stained with mud, trembling with the movement inside. Max approached, cautious. The scent hit him: milk, newborn skin, fear, and cold. Inside, barely shielded by a thin towel, was a baby girl. Pale face, blue-tinged lips, tiny hands trembling, and something within Max awakened. No one told him what to do. No voice guided him, but instinct roared louder than the wind. Gently, he gripped the edge of the box with his teeth and dragged it, inch by inch, out from the thicket. Mud slowed him. The rain blinded him, but he didn't stop. He dragged that box all the way to the roadside, where headlights flickered now and then, only to disappear into the storm. There, he stood guard. He barked. Again, again, again. Each bark was a plea. Desperate, furious, exhausted. No one stopped. A barking dog in a storm? Just another danger to dodge. Still, he barked. When his voice broke, he whined. When no one came, he curled his body around the baby, using his own soaked frame to shield her from the wind. Head lowered, eyes wide, ears twitching. That night, a nameless dog and a nameless child were alone together in a world that had yet to see what love truly looks like when it has absolutely nothing left to lose. And still, Max did not move, because some protectors are born, not trained. And some hearts, no matter how broken, will never stop fighting to keep another heart alive. The storm finally passed, leaving behind a pale, gray dawn that hung low over the soaked landscape. Puddles shimmered on the road. Tree branches heavy with rain clung to everything in sight. It was as though the earth itself had paused, holding its breath after a night of fury. Grace Thompson, a quiet woman in her early 50s, zipped up her raincoat and stepped out of her front gate. Umbrella in one hand, handbag in the other, she followed the same path she'd taken for over 20 years to her job at the local diner. But this morning felt different. As she approached a bend near the main road, something caught her eye. A shape, motionless, curled beside what looked like a battered plastic box. She squinted. A dog, large, soaked to the skin. At first, she thought it was dead, until it stirred. Her pace quickened, heart pounding. As she neared, her breath caught in her throat. A German shepherd, ribs jutting out beneath drenched fur, shivered violently, but didn't move. His head rested protectively against the side of the white styrofoam box, dented and soaked with mud. The surrounding ground was littered with wet leaves, torn paper, and tiny footprints. Grace's eyes widened. Was it food? A litter of pups? No, a sound. Faint, muffled, a baby's cry. Her stomach dropped. She dropped to her knees. The dog lifted his head weakly and looked into her eyes, letting out a broken, hoarse bark. It sounded like a plea. With shaking fingers, Grace pried open the box. Inside, a newborn girl, barely moving, skin cold as ice, lips parted in a shallow gasp. The thin towel meant to cover her was soaked through, but she was alive. "Oh my God," Grace whispered, a trembling hand flying to her mouth. She fumbled for her phone and managed to dial emergency services with fingers that barely obeyed. "This is an emergency. There's a baby and a dog. I think he saved her." Minutes later, the sound of sirens broke the quiet. An ambulance skidded to a halt, a police cruiser following close behind. Paramedics swarmed, wrapping the baby in heated blankets, whispering to one another with grave expressions. One glanced at Grace, astonished. This dog kept her warm all night. Grace nodded. He pulled her out of the woods, got her to the road, then waited. The shepherd, still trembling and exhausted, was lifted gently and bundled into a rescue blanket. Grace knelt beside him, stroking his head. "You're a good boy," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "You're her angel." The baby girl was rushed to intensive care. Doctors said her survival was impossible. Yet, she lived. They named her Mira, from the word miracle. And the dog once known to no one was now known to all. They called him Guardian. News spread like wildfire. The local paper's headline read, "Stray dog pulls baby from woods, saves life in storm." By evening, photos of the drenched dog and the fragile baby wrapped in a medic's arms flooded social media. Twitter lit up. Facebook groups shared the story with captions like, "Not all heroes wear capes. Some have paws. Guardian angel on 4 legs." He had no collar, no home, but to Mira, and to a town now holding its breath in awe, he was everything. At the hospital, the infant's room was softly lit, the rhythmic beeping of monitors the only sound. Tiny Mira lay nestled in warm pink blankets, her chest rising and falling, each breath steadier than the last. Nurses called her the miracle baby, and they weren't wrong. Round-the-clock care, nourishment, and warmth brought her back to life faster than even doctors expected. Grace visited every day. She sat beside Mira's cot, humming lullabies, whispering promises. "You're safe now, sweet girl. We've got you." In a separate wing, at a nearby veterinary clinic, Guardian received care of his own. The vets discovered signs of old injuries, possibly abuse. He was severely malnourished and battling a dangerous respiratory infection brought on by the cold. He didn't resist. He simply watched, quiet, stoic. The only time he reacted was when the door opened, ears perking up, eyes searching, as if expecting her. Once both Mira and Guardian were declared stable, Grace made a decision, one that caught even the social worker by surprise. "I'd like to foster them, just for now, until the world makes sense again." The request was approved. That first night, when she brought them both home, something changed. Mira stirred in her crib near the window. She whimpered. Guardian, still thin and weak but steadier, padded over and lay beside the cot. He gently rested his head on its edge. And just like that, Mira stopped crying. It became their ritual. Wherever Mira went, Guardian followed. When she slept, he guarded her crib. When she cried, he licked her tiny hand until she giggled or drifted back to sleep. When Grace held Mira in her arms, Guardian lay at their feet, a silent shadow of devotion. One morning, Grace was folding laundry when she heard it. A sharp squeal of laughter. She turned, startled. Guardian was nudging a small plush ball toward Mira's crib with his nose. It bounced softly against the rail. Mira burst into laughter. Her very first laugh. Grace stood frozen. A hand pressed to her chest. Tears filled her eyes. "You too," she whispered to Guardian. "You're already a teen." But nothing could prepare them for what would come next. It was just past 2 a.m. The house was silent, draped in the stillness that only comes in those fragile hours before dawn. Grace was fast asleep in her room, the soft rustle of trees outside the only sound. But not all was well. Guardian, lying as always beside Mira's crib, suddenly stirred. He sniffed the air once, twice. His ears shot up. Something wasn't right. He rose abruptly, nose pressed to Mira's chest. Then, he barked. Low, urgent. Mira wasn't breathing. Guardian barked again, louder this time, then tore down the hallway, claws skidding on hardwood. He leapt onto Grace's bed, yanking at the blanket with his teeth, barking desperately now, each sound sharper than the last. Grace jolted awake, heart hammering. Guardian. What? He dashed back toward the crib. She followed. Her eyes fell on Mira, her face red, lips turning blue. Oh God! She didn't hesitate. With trembling hands, she scooped Mira up and began CPR, guided by the calm but firm voice of the emergency dispatcher. Minutes later, paramedics arrived. Mira had suffered a rare and sudden allergic reaction, acute, life-threatening. A pediatrician approached Grace later, expression grim. If you'd found her even 5 minutes later. He didn't finish the sentence. Grace didn't need him to. She sat beside Mira's hospital bed all night, one hand wrapped around Mira's tiny fingers, the other holding Guardian's paw. You did it again, she whispered through tears. You saved her, again. Guardian didn't move. His eyes never left the crib. He didn't need praise. He didn't need to be told he was a hero, because this wasn't about recognition. This was about her. He had no words, but Guardian had something deeper, a purpose. And Mira? She was never alone. Years passed with gentle grace, as if the storm that once brought them together had long since blown itself out, leaving only warmth in its wake. On a soft spring afternoon, the garden was alive with the sound of tiny paws, playful yelps, and the rustle of wind in the trees. 3 puppies, Guardian's own. Perhaps, chased butterflies beneath the old oak tree, tumbling over each other in joyous chaos. Guardian lay nearby, nestled in the grass. His coat had dulled, muzzle gray with age, but his eyes were still warm, still watchful, still full of that quiet, unwavering love. Beside him, Mira, now 5 years old, was stretched out on her stomach with a picture book. One hand gently rested on Guardian's back. The other turned the pages, slowly and carefully. You still love stories, hey? She whispered, smiling. Guardian gave a soft huff, eyes closing peacefully. In that moment, there was no storm, no hunger, no loneliness, just the breeze, the laughter, the bond. A dog who had once been forgotten, and a girl who had once been left behind. Together, whole, because some souls aren't taught to love or to protect. They're born knowing how, even if no one's watching, even if the world has turned its back. Because sometimes, the greatest heroes walk on 4 legs, and carry a heart that never gives up. Underscore 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 underscore. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Amazing Paw Stories, where true tales of loyalty, love, and the animals who forever change our lives come alive. Because sometimes, the ones the world throws away are the ones who end up saving it. And so, a story that began on a stormy night ends in a home filled with warmth, with a child's laughter, and the steady wag of an old hero's tail. Guardian never wore a cape. He never needed words. He simply showed up when it mattered most. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a like, share it with someone who believes in the power of true connection, and subscribe to Amazing Paw Stories. Here, each week, we bring you tales that prove the greatest heroes often don't have a voice, but they have a heart that speaks louder than words. Until the next story,